You've probably heard police officers say something like this during a traffic stop. You don't mind if I take a quick look, right? Sounds casual, sounds polite, sounds like a simple yes or no question. But here's what most people don't realize, what nobody tells you until it's too late. If you say yes to that question, or even if you say no, but you say it the wrong way, that might be enough for police to get you out of your car, search not just the inside, but potentially tear your entire vehicle apart piece by piece, detain you on the side of the road for hours, and maybe even arrest you and charge you with crimes you didn't commit. And here's the wildest, most infuriating part of all. The Supreme Court of the United States has explicitly ruled that police officers don't even have to tell you that you're legally allowed to refuse their request. They can ask for permission to search without ever informing you that no is a completely valid answer. And in this video, I'm going to show you two critical things that could save you from arrest, prosecution, and years of legal hell. Number one, the specific consent traps that police officers are trained to use to trick you into giving up your constitutional rights. And number two, how you can spot these traps early and stop police from using them against you before it's too late, before you've said something you can't take back, before you've given permission you can't revoke. Oh, and stick around to the very end of this video because I'm going to give you an exact word-for-word script that you can screenshot right now or memorize so that if you ever find yourself in this situation on the side of the road with an officer leaning into your window, you'll know exactly what to say to protect yourself. These aren't just good ideas. These are the specific phrases that have kept my clients out of jail, kept evidence out of court, and kept innocent people from having their lives destroyed by unlawful searches. Before we dive into the specific traps, let me tell you about Marcus. That's not his real name, but his story is absolutely true, and it happens every single day across this country. Marcus was 28 years old, driving home from his job at a warehouse in Ohio. He got pulled over for allegedly failing to use his turn signal when changing lanes. Simple traffic stop. The officer walked up, asked for license and registration, ran his information. Everything came back clean. No warrants, no prior arrests, clean driving record. The officer should have written a warning or a small ticket and sent Marcus on his way. That's not what happened. Instead, the officer leaned into Marcus's window and asked, "You don't mind if I take a quick look around your car, do you?" Marcus, being a polite person, being someone who was raised to respect authority and cooperate with police, said three words that changed his entire life. He said, "Yeah, go ahead. That's it. 3 words, 3 seconds." The officer spent the next 45 minutes tearing Marcus's car apart, ripped out the seats, emptied every compartment, went through every bag, every pocket, every corner, and buried deep inside the trunk, inside a gym bag that Marcus hadn't opened in weeks, the officer found a small amount of drugs that Marcus's cousin had apparently hidden there without Marcus's knowledge when Marcus had given him a ride 2 weeks earlier. Marcus was arrested on the spot. He spent 18 months fighting drug possession charges. He lost his job because he couldn't make bail immediately. He nearly lost his apartment. His entire life fell apart. And here's the most devastating part. If Marcus had simply known to say 5 different words instead of those 3 words, none of it would have happened. If he had said, "I do not consent to a search," the officer would have had no legal basis to search his car. The drugs would never have been found. Marcus would have driven home, gone to work the next day, and his life would have continued normally. Instead, 3 words of polite cooperation cost him 18 months of hell. What did Marcus do wrong? What should he have said? I'm going to tell you exactly what to say in just a few minutes. But first, you need to understand the psychological traps that police are specifically trained to use. These aren't accidents. These aren't just casual conversation. These are deliberate, calculated techniques taught in police academies and reinforced through department training to manipulate your natural instincts and trick you into giving up rights you don't even know you have. Which brings me to trap number 1, the double negative question. Picture this scenario. You're sitting on the side of the road. Your heart is pounding because getting pulled over is stressful for everyone. The officer leans into your window and says very casually, "You don't mind if I look around, do you?" Sounds polite, sounds casual, sounds like friendly small talk, but it's actually a brilliantly designed, loaded question that scrambles your brain no matter how you answer it. Think about it carefully. If you say yes in response to that question, you might have meant, "Yes, I do mind. Yes, I object to you searching my car." But the officer is going to interpret it as, "Yes, you have my permission," and they're going to write in their police report, "The driver consented to a search of the vehicle." On the other hand, if you say no, you might have meant, "No, I don't want you to search my car. No, I do not give you permission." But the officer can and will twist that into, "Oh, he said no," which means he doesn't mind, so I can go ahead with the search. Either way, no matter how you answer, the officer wins because the question itself is deliberately designed to create confusion and ambiguity that can be interpreted as consent, no matter what you say. Now imagine this continuation of the same scenario. The officer looks at you and asks, "There's nothing illegal in the car, right?" You instinctively respond, "No, there's nothing illegal." Then the officer immediately follows up, "Okay, so you don't mind if I take a look then, right?" Your adrenaline is pumping. Your brain is trying to process confusing double negative phrasing. The pressure is intense. So you just kind of mumble out something vague like, "Yeah, I guess," or "Sure, whatever." Just like that, in that split second of confusion, the officer now has what courts will consider your legal consent to search your entire vehicle. And that's just the starter trick, the opening move. The next trap is even more psychologically manipulative because officers are specifically trained to use your own honesty and your own words as weapons against you. But first, here's exactly how you shut down trap number one before it can hurt you. Never ever answer that kind of trick question with a simple yes or no response. Those answers create ambiguity and confusion that officers will exploit. Instead, respond very specifically and very clearly, "Officer, I do not consent to a search." If the officer asks again or rephrases the question, repeat the exact same sentence. "Officer, I do not consent to a search." Remove all ambiguity. Remove all confusion. Make your refusal crystal clear. And if you can, make absolutely sure that the interaction is being recorded either on the officer's body camera or on your own phone recording from inside your car. Now everything is memorialized on video, and the officer can never come back later claiming that you somehow consented to the search when you explicitly refused. Which brings me to trap number two, and this one makes me angrier than almost anything else police do during traffic stops: the two-step setup. This is the familiar "if you have nothing to hide" mind game that officers absolutely love to use during roadside stops. Here's how it works in practice. Step number one is the setup question: "Is there anything illegal in this vehicle?" Most people instantly respond, "No, nothing illegal at all." Why? Because you haven't done anything wrong. You don't want drama or confrontation. You just want to go home. You want this traffic stop to end as quickly as possible, which is exactly the psychological hook the officer wants to set. Then comes step number two of the trap. The officer looks at you and says, "Well, then you don't mind if I take a look, do you?" Now it feels like you're completely cornered with no good options. If you say yes to the search, you've voluntarily given up your constitutional rights to the police. But if you say no, it suddenly feels like you just admitted to lying in your previous answer. It feels like you're contradicting yourself. It feels like you must be hiding something after all, because why else would you refuse if you just said there's nothing illegal? That psychological tension right there, that feeling of being trapped between two bad choices, is exactly why police officers are trained to ask this specific two-step sequence of questions. They're using your natural human instinct to appear honest and cooperative as a weapon against you. Here's the fundamental legal truth that every single person needs to understand. You are never, ever legally required to prove your innocence by giving up your right to privacy. Never. This particular consent trap bothers me more than almost any other police tactic because under our Constitution, specifically under the Fourth Amendment, You have an absolute and fundamental right to privacy in your vehicle and in your belongings. You also have an unconditional right to refuse consent to any search. These are core constitutional protections. You should never feel guilty. You should never feel suspicious. You should never feel like you're doing something wrong when you exercise your constitutional rights and tell an officer you will not consent to a search. The officer is going to try to make you feel guilty. They're going to try to make you feel like only criminals refuse searches. Don't fall for it. So how exactly can you beat this manipulative two-step trap? When officers approach you and try to set the hook with step number one by asking, is there anything illegal in the vehicle? Here's the absolute safest answer you can give. Officer, I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and my Sixth Amendment right to counsel, and I will not answer any questions without my lawyer present. You might feel like saying that makes you look guilty or suspicious. I understand that feeling, but here's the reality. Looking guilty is not a crime. Appearing nervous is not a crime. Refusing to answer questions is not a crime, but waiving your constitutional rights gets innocent people thrown in handcuffs and sent to jail all the time. Now, maybe you're thinking, okay, Jeff, but I haven't actually done anything wrong. I have nothing to hide. So I am going to answer the officer's question honestly. Fair enough. That's your choice. So let's say you're going to tell the officer, no, there's nothing illegal in my car. Fine, but you know exactly what's coming next. The officer is going to look directly at you and say, well, you don't mind if I take a look then, do you? This is the moment. This is where you have to resist your natural human desire to cooperate and be helpful. You have to look directly back at that officer and say very clearly, officer, there's nothing illegal in my car, but I do not consent to a search. Contrary to how the officer is absolutely going to make you feel in that moment, you are completely allowed to hold both of those truths at the same time. You can be both innocent and refuse to have an officer dig through your personal belongings. You can be both honest about having nothing illegal and still assert your constitutional right to privacy. These are not contradictory positions. These are complementary truths. And any officer who tries to make you feel like you're being suspicious or uncooperative for asserting your rights is manipulating you. Now, if you think the two-step setup is bad, that brings us to trap number 3. And this one tricks more people than almost any other tactic, the quick look lie. This is the consent trap that so many people fall for because it sounds so harmless, so minor, so reasonable. The officer says, mind if I take a quick look around? Or I'll just take a little peek inside, or let me just do a quick scan of your car and I'll have you on your way in 2 minutes. The phrase quick look feels so small and so harmless. You imagine the officer just leaning slightly into your car, glancing around for 5 seconds, and then sending you on your way. Nothing invasive, nothing serious, just a quick peek. But here's the brutal reality that quick look turns into a 30-minute to 1-hour complete teardown of your entire vehicle. I have personally seen dozens and dozens of cases where an officer approaches the driver's window during a routine traffic stop and says, you mind if I just take a quick look around? And then for the next hour, sometimes longer, they are systematically tearing that car apart, ripping out seats, emptying every compartment, going through every bag, every pocket, every container, dismantling interior panels, and eventually they find something, anything that they believe will justify an arrest. And now the driver who thought they were agreeing to a 5-second peek is going to jail. You might be thinking, oh, well, wait a minute, Jeff. I haven't done anything wrong, so I have nothing to hide. Like, what's the harm? Here's the harm. Even if you don't end up going to jail, your car ends up completely torn apart. Seats ripped out, contents dumped everywhere, personal belongings scattered all over the roadside. And the police are going to leave you there on the side of the road to put everything back together yourself. You thought you were agreeing to a casual peek. But the court will rule that you legally consented to a full, comprehensive search. Because here's the critical legal principle you need to understand. Once you say yes to even a quick peek, The court gives the police complete legal authority to search anywhere in your vehicle that could reasonably contain whatever they claim they're looking for. And what are they looking for? They often don't even say. They keep it vague, just looking around, just checking things out. And that vagueness gives them massive legal latitude to search everywhere. That might include opening every bag and container, searching under and inside seats, removing and disassembling seats entirely, going through your trunk, checking inside door panels, looking in the engine compartment, and sometimes going much, much further than you ever imagined possible. And here's where it gets even worse. If during that quick look, the officer either sees or smells anything that seems even remotely suspicious to them, that observation can give them legal probable cause to go even deeper, to bring in drug dogs, to call for backup, to expand the search even further. What started as just a quick peek has now turned into a multi-hour ordeal that destroys your vehicle and potentially your life. So how do you beat this insidious quick look trap? Anytime you hear an officer use phrases like quick peek or just want to look around or it'll only take a second, you need to understand that this is actually code language for I'm going to conduct a full legal search of your vehicle. I'm going to keep you on the side of the road for as long as I want, and I'm going to tear apart anything inside your car that I choose to. So when you feel that pressure, when the officer is deliberately making it sound minor and harmless and casual, you look directly back at him and you say, "Officer, I understand that you're wanting to look around, but I do not consent to a search. And at this point, I'm going to exercise my constitutional right not to answer any more questions." Now, here's what's going to happen next, and you need to be prepared for it. The officer is going to lean in closer. He's going to change his tone, and he's going to say something like, "What are you talking about? Is there something you're hiding here? If you haven't done anything wrong, why wouldn't you allow me to look in your car for just 1 minute? What are you so worried about?" You have got to resist the overwhelming urge to start arguing with the officer. It's going to be very tempting to defend yourself, to explain yourself, to justify your decision. Don't do it. The best and safest response is to simply repeat, "Officer, it's not about that. I have a constitutional right to refuse searches, and I am exercising that right. I do not consent to a search." Then stop talking. Just stop. Stick to your position. Don't elaborate. Don't justify. Don't argue. But even if you've been rock solid so far, even if you've successfully refused consent and stood up for your rights, officers have another trap ready to deploy. This brings me to trap number 4, the warrant threat. You've been firm, you've been clear, you've stood up for your constitutional rights. You haven't caved to pressure even when the officer tried to make you feel guilty, suspicious, or uncooperative. But now you're going to hear the officer say something like this: "If you don't let me search, I'm just going to go get a warrant anyway," or "We can do this the easy way or the hard way," or "Fine, I'll get a judge on the phone right now. You'll be sitting here all day waiting." This is pure psychological warfare. It's an intimidation tactic. The officer wants you to believe that you're going to be stuck on the side of the road for the next 4 or 5 hours, that your entire day is going to be ruined, that you're going to miss work or miss picking up your kids or miss whatever important thing you have scheduled unless you just cooperate right now and let them search. Here's what officers are absolutely not telling you when they make this threat. In order for them to actually obtain a valid search warrant, they need 3 specific things. Number 1, they need probable cause that you have actually committed a crime or that evidence of a crime is in your vehicle. Not suspicion, not a hunch, not a feeling. Actual probable cause based on specific articulable facts. Number 2, they then need to take the time to write up a detailed search warrant affidavit explaining all of their probable cause and present it to a judge for review. This takes time, this takes effort. This requires them to leave the traffic stop and go do paperwork. Number 3, they need to actually find a judge who is available and willing to review their affidavit and sign off on the warrant based on the probable cause presented. Here's the critical insight. If the officer already had strong probable cause to search your vehicle, they wouldn't be asking for your consent. They would simply tell you that you're being detained, they would force you out of your car, and they would search it based on their probable cause. They don't need your permission if they have probable cause. So when an officer looks at you and threatens, well, I'm just going to go get a warrant anyway, what they're actually saying is, I'm hoping you're naive enough and scared enough to just agree to let me search because I don't actually have enough evidence to get a warrant, but I'm betting you don't know that. And if that particular intimidation tactic doesn't work on you, officers have one final trick, the sneakiest and most deceptive trap of them all. This is the trap where they don't even bother asking for your permission anymore. Instead, they simply act like you've already given them permission and they just start searching. But before I explain exactly how that works and how to stop it, let's first address how to handle that warrant threat. When the officer threatens that they're going to go get a warrant, you simply look at them calmly and say, "Officer, I do not consent to a search. If you believe you have probable cause to obtain a warrant, I'm happy to wait here while you do that." That's it. You just called their bluff. You're not arguing with them. You're not escalating the situation. You're not being rude or confrontational. You're simply refusing to do their job for them by giving up your constitutional rights. You're standing firm. And here's something super important that I need to emphasize. If officers decide to completely ignore your refusal and search you in your car anyway, without your consent and without a warrant, do not physically resist them. Do not push them away. Do not try to stop them physically. Instead, make it absolutely crystal clear. Try to record the interaction on video if you possibly can, and look directly at the officer and say loudly and clearly, "I do not consent to this search. I am protesting this search. I am stating for the record that this is a violation of my Fourth Amendment constitutional rights." Say it loud enough that body cameras and dash cameras will pick it up. Say it clearly and repeatedly, but do not, under any circumstances, physically resist or try to stop the officer. Why? Because physical resistance is exactly what the officer is hoping you'll do. That gives them legal justification to use force against you, to arrest you for resisting or obstructing, and to charge you with assaulting an officer. You will never win a physical confrontation with police on the roadside. Never. You can only win later in court with a good attorney. And if the officer completely disregarded your explicitly stated refusal to consent, if they searched anyway without a warrant or probable cause, then when you hire an attorney, you may be able to bring a civil rights lawsuit against them. You may be able to get any evidence they found suppressed and thrown out of court. You may even be able to sue them personally and make them pay damages when they lose their qualified immunity defense because they trampled all over your clearly established constitutional rights. But all of that happens later in court with lawyers, not on the roadside with your fists. Or finally, what about that sneakiest trap of all that I mentioned earlier? That brings me to trick number 5, the fake order, or what I call the "I'm going to search anyway" trap. This trick is absolutely slick because it doesn't sound like a question at all. It sounds like a command, like an order that you have no choice but to obey. The officer says, "I'm going to search your vehicle now," or "Pop the trunk," or "I'm looking inside," or "I'm going to check your bag real quick," or "Stand aside." Notice something? No "may I?" No polite request. No asking for your consent. Just pure authoritative commands, barking orders at you, stating what they're about to do as if it's already decided and you have no say in the matter. Most people hear this commanding tone and immediately think, "Oh, he said he's going to do it. He's telling me what's happening. I guess I don't have a choice anymore. I guess I have to comply." So they step aside, they pop the trunk, they hand over their bag, they allow the search to happen. But then what does the officer write in their official police report later? They write, "The driver voluntarily consented to a search of the vehicle." They write, "The subject willingly handed over his bag for inspection." In fact, officers are specifically trained to claim that they never technically ordered you to do anything. They'll say they merely stated what they were going to do and you voluntarily complied and helped them. That makes it look like consent. And sometimes officers will add a tiny linguistic trick at the end. They'll say, I'm going to search your car now, okay? That tiny word, okay, tacked on at the end is them fishing for any kind of response from you. They're hoping for a nod. They're hoping for a shrug. They're hoping you'll just stare at them with a confused expression that they can later interpret as passive agreement. They want to use any of that as the legal basis for arguing that you consented to the search. So how do you beat this particularly sneaky consent trap? You flip the interaction back into a question and you draw a bright, clear line. You say, officer, are you asking for my permission or is this an order? Because I do not consent to any search. Or an even shorter version if you need to speak quickly. If you're asking my permission, I do not consent. By saying those specific words, if the officer actually has valid legal grounds to search your vehicle, that's when they're going to explicitly tell you, this is an order, you're being detained, step out of the vehicle. And if that happens, if they clearly state it's an order, then you comply physically, but you continue to verbally assert your rights. You say, officer, I do not consent to any search. I am complying with your order under protest. This search is without my consent. And if they continue to push, if they try to intimidate you, if they try to force the search through without proper legal authority, don't physically resist, but continue to repeat like a broken record. Officer, I do not consent to any search. I do not consent to any search. I do not consent to any search. Make it absolutely clear. Make it unambiguous. Make it impossible for them to later claim you consented. So finally, here's the part I told you at the very beginning to stick around for. This is the exact word-for-word script that you can use to stop police officers dead in their tracks when they try to deploy these consent traps against you. And I want you to understand something important. You are not being rude when you say these things. You are not being difficult. You are not being uncooperative. You are simply standing up for your constitutional rights, rights that every single one of us has as American citizens, rights that people fought and died to protect. Number one, if officers ask you confusing consent questions like, you don't mind if I search your car, right? Or mind if I take a quick look? You look directly at the officer and you say clearly, officer, I do not consent to any search. Then to make sure you're not illegally detained on the side of the road indefinitely, you immediately follow up with, am I free to leave? Number two, if the officer hits you with the two-step consent trap by asking, is there anything illegal in the car? And you have two options. Option A, if you want to take the complete silence route, you say, officer, I am invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, and I do not want to answer any questions without a lawyer present. Option B, if you've already answered and said there's nothing illegal in your car and now they're asking to search, you say, officer, there's nothing illegal in my car, but I do not consent to any searches. Number three, if the officer uses the quick look language and says something like, can I just take a quick look around? It won't take very long. You respond, officer, I know you might think this sounds minor, but I do not consent to any search of my vehicle, not even for a quick look around. Number four, if the officer escalates and threatens to get a warrant, here's your simple response. Officer, I do not consent to a search. If you believe you have probable cause to obtain a warrant, I am happy to wait here while you do that. And finally, number five, when the officer tries to just order you around and says something like, I'm going to search your car now, or pop the trunk because I'm looking inside, you say, officer, are you asking for my permission or is this an order? I do not consent to a search of my car. Don't let Marcus's nightmare become your nightmare. Know your rights, use your words, protect yourself, and never, ever voluntarily give up your constitutional protections just because an officer asks nicely or tries to make you feel guilty for refusing. Your rights exist for a reason. Use them.